Well, hello, folks, and welcome. Welcome to our kickoff for the Land and Water Conservation Fund Stewardship Program. So, my name is Lauren Pyle. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Outdoor Recreation Grants Manager for the Vermont Department of Forests, Parks, and Recreation. So, I will be your host today. But just to give you a little bit more of an overview of what we're in for today, today's session is being recorded. So, we're going to be sending it out by email afterwards, along with the resources and ideas that we're talking throughout this. And really, this is our space to share a bit of like what's driving this conversation, what we're thinking so far, our plans, and then really for you all to have the opportunity to ask questions and learn. So if at any point throughout this presentation and session today, you have questions, please feel free to hop in however makes sense. I do get a bit of a verbal train going on, so please feel free to stop the train at any time. You can use the raise hand function, so we'll see the hand pop up. You can enter a question in the chat, or probably if folks start coming onto camera and off mute, I'll be like, somebody has a question. We'll queue you up right here to go ahead and get that taken care of in real time. But I will have a couple of pauses built throughout. So I am joined today by a couple of our staff members with the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. We have Marlena Baker, who is here, who is the one who emailed you all about this session, who's one of our grant specialists, and then Joe Kill, who is our other grant specialist, who is here today. And so they'll be mostly helping to provide tech support, message and chat, those sorts of pieces. But really, all three of us work together on this program. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So we're here today to talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And this program has been around for a long time. As I said, like we're going to talk about the program a bit, the federal requirements related to it, talk about self-inspections, and then really what we're thinking of for that, and then what happens next for all of you, and really everyone who's participating in the inspections. So you're here today because you manage a LWCF site, or the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And when folks registered for this session, we asked folks about their familiarity with the LWCF program, and it was pretty broadly split from folks who've had previous experience managing their LWCF projects, closing those out, people who've just applied for LWCF. But then we've also had folks who this was your first time hearing about the LWCF program. You didn't maybe even know that you had an LWCF site until we reached out. And so everybody who's here today, as well as folks who are not able to join us in real time, has a site that has received funding from the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This is a program that is funded through the National Park Service and then administered by the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. And it's been around for a long time. It's been funding projects in Vermont since 1965 and was established in 1964. And since 2020, it has been fully and permanently funded at the federal level thanks to the Great American Outdoors Act. And LWCF, as it has been funding since 1969, the investments in our state are very significant. So what you're looking at now is a map of all the places that have received LWCF funding in the past. And so you're looking at dots that represent parking lots, bathrooms, playgrounds, picnic areas, tennis ball courts, pools, soccer complexes, baseball complexes, skate parks, really you name it. If it is outdoor recreation, chances are it's been funded at some point in Vermont. And on that map, the blue dots that you're seeing are projects that were applied for, and the projects were implemented by municipalities and other community entities. And all the green dots are projects that have been implemented on state lands by, say, Forest Parks and Recreation, by Fish and Wildlife, or other agencies that are state landowners. And so all together, we're looking at well over 800, almost 840 projects that have been funded since then at 467 unique sites. And so we say sites because there are some places where, it's one park, and over the time, maybe they've gotten a couple of LWCF grants. Other times it might be one park that has one project. So we think about it by the state, that sort of site or park level. And all of these combined dots represent an absolute investment of over $41.5 million. That's not adjusted for inflation. So that is over $41 million for recreation through this program since 1965. And as a federal grant program, there are requirements that come with this program. And the main requirement is that any recreation space that is acquired or developed using LWCF funding has to be maintained and open to the public forever. And that's part of federal legislation. And in order to ensure compliance with this, sites are supposed to be inspected every 5 years after the project is completed. And what gets inspected is an area that is known as the 6F area. And that is a space that it is defined by a distinct boundary called the 6F boundary. And it's 6F because it's related to that federal legislation, the 6F3 section of the LWCF Act. And so depending on where you are, the boundary might be a parcel boundary. It might be another area that was approved by the National Park Service as the area. It could be the entire park. And over the last year, we've actually worked to map that entire set of boundaries and all of the points. So I think maybe in the chat, could we get a link to the map, please, from one of our grant teams? So that'll come through to you so you can zoom in on your site. But this is a pretty awesome piece that you can go and look at the LWCF site or sites in your community and see where those boundaries are. And when we do the inspection, we're looking at everything within the boundary, not just the asset that was funded through LWCF. So we're looking at the whole space to say, is it being maintained and is it open for recreation for the public? And so with that, we know that there are some folks on the call who are at various stages of development within the grants because there's really multiple types of inspections within this. Some of the folks who we recruited and reached out to for this are actually also doing a pre-award inspection. This is a separate type of inspection that FPR staff come out to do that is a required part of the request for funding to get money in the first place from the National Park Service. There's also an inspection that you have to do if you get a grant at the end of your grant, which we call project completion. At the very end, it's part of a closeout package. So if you got funding to build a pickleball court, this is your moment at the end to say, yes, we've inspected it, it's done, it's open and ready. And it's part of the project closeout package. And what we're here to talk about today are those ongoing inspections that happen every 5 years that we call stewardship inspections. And those have to happen once every 5 years, and it's once per site. It doesn't really matter for us how many projects, how many previous grants have been funded in that area. It is per that boundary area once every 5 years is what we're looking for. And the criteria for those inspections for the federal requirements are pretty broad. All of this is defined in our federal manual that comes from the National Park Service about the Land and Water Conservation Fund. But the type of criteria that these stewardship inspections are looking for include things like retention and use. Do you still own it? And is it still open to the public? And is the space that is supposed to be just for recreation still just for recreation? How does it look? Is it being maintained? Is it appropriately staffed and serviced? Is it open to everybody? Are there signs as needed? And if it was a purchase that was like an LWCF project to buy land that was then going to become a park later on, like did that ever happen? And what happened in the meantime? It's called interim use. But these are pretty broad descriptions of what folks need to be looking for with stewardship inspections. And so with these inspection requirements that come to us from the federal government, our team has been working over the last year to really revamp the process so that folks who manage sites in communities, municipalities, cities, and across the state can do the inspections in order to stay in compliance. And so we're going to be launching a pilot for this. And so I'm going to run you through like sort of our plans for this and do a quick check-in at that point, and then go into it further from there. And so we are launching a self-inspection program. And when we say self-inspection, that means that we have a form, we have like our anticipated plan is forms and resources, tools, so that communities can go out and do the inspections themselves. Other than it being a staff member who is generally, we encourage it to be a permanent staff member if it is available, or if it's not, like a long-term volunteer who's serving on a committee, who's actively engaged in managing that space. It's something that's quick that you can do yourself. And why we think this is important is that in all of our digital mapping, the sites, there are a lot of sites across the state that look like they're probably okay from the satellite level, that we don't expect to have major conflicts with the federal requirements. Even if you didn't know you had an LWCF site because it was funded in the 1970s, from our satellite imagery that in the mapping work we're doing, most of them look pretty good. And so we wanted to offer this opportunity to communities to do this because your spaces, right? So one of the pieces that I mentioned was signing, right? Do you have an LWCF sign somewhere on the property? For us, to go out there, we'd be like, well, where are the property? Like, where is the edge of this property? Where are the signs? Where is everything? And it's really not going to, we might miss things if our staff are the only ones going out and do there. As people who know your sites, can probably, you know where to look, what's going on. And these questions are pretty big picture. They're going to be pretty quick for you all and your teams to complete. So it's going to be a pretty easy process overall if you do it versus like if we come, it's going to be probably a lot more involved, and be really pulling together a lot more pieces. We'll be looking at a different level for those criteria. And it really is the fastest way to do a self-inspection to get the site back into good standing. And so our plan is to build this whole self-inspection program. And we want to start with a pilot. And you have been specifically invited to participate in this pilot. What we want to do for this is to help provide one-to-one support as we test this process together in preparation for a bigger, broader launch next year to go to hundreds of municipalities. And so this is a space to test the form, test the resources, like to offer feedback, to ask questions, and for us to be able to provide individualized support to the communities that are participating in this, knowing that this is going to be the space that we have to offer individualized support when we're working with 20, 30 communities who are starting this off, versus when we go to a couple hundred next year. So this is a great space for that, to really test this out and have those questions to say, this isn't unclear, I need more information on this. And then we can actually help develop stuff like in real time to help meet your needs. And overall, we hope the communities also help connect with each other a bit through this process. And the folks who were invited to participate in this pilot group met a couple criteria. We really did filter our list of 838 projects down to get to you for this invitation. Your sites are due for inspections, but they've all been for projects that were funded within the last 15 years. And we did that because at a certain point, we know that there's a huge transition as resources become obsolete, staff change. And so we picked projects within the last 15 years. It's really 5 to 15 years ago. So those projects are there, they're established. You hopefully have your processes in place for how they're going to be maintained, how they're going to be open. It becomes sort of that well-oiled function there. As I said before, based on the mapping results, we suspect that there's not going to be a major finding for your site. So we wanted to start with this group for that. It was carefully selected for that. And we specifically identified communities that are distributed across the state of Vermont, both geographically well distributed, as well as across recreation type and activity. We didn't want to invite only people, like only municipalities that had playgrounds to participate. So some of you have playgrounds, there's skate parks, there's pickleball courts, there's tennis courts, there are acquisitions. I think we got a couple big trail projects in there. Some people were buying land with LWCF funding. It really is a whole variety because we want to make sure that the stewardship program fits all types of projects across the state. And if you might be thinking, well, this is great. Why should I opt in, right? You've been invited to participate, but why should I do this? This is a great opportunity for you all as municipal leaders to help shape this program. We want your feedback throughout the whole process. Is it reasonable? Does it make sense? Do you have questions? How can we help better so that when we do the broader law can? So it's a great opportunity to engage in really help potentially directing future federal funding as we look for sites that meet these requirements. Um, but you'll get to help shape the program. As I alluded to before, you're going to get individualized support from our team as we go through this, recognizing that this is new for everybody. We are starting with a limited number of communities so that you can call us, you can email us, and we'll be there to help pretty rapidly throughout that. As I said earlier, every site who was invited is a site that's due. So by doing this now, you're going to be one of the first communities to be back in compliance for our state. And so that's a great thing to be able to report to your select board, to your town leadership. You say, yeah, we're back in compliance. We're one of the first in the state to be able to do that. And if you're a site manager who just wants to make sure you're doing the right thing, you can have that peace of mind of knowing that you're back in compliance, that you're already back in set. So we want to help you do that. Participating in the pilot is a great opportunity to also get it done now because it will be a requirement to do it next year no matter what. So by doing it now, you're going to get these sort of extra perks before we do the broader rollout next year. And as a bit of appreciation for this, anybody who does their site inspections this year who is participating in the pilot program will receive additional preference points in our next community grant round for LWCF, which will be in 2026. So in many ways, that's bonus points on a future application for funding for your community if you choose to apply. And the last sort of big perk about participating in this pilot program is that if there is any sort of compliance funding, you're at the top of our list to help. I've mentioned signs a couple times that have come up. We have a limited number of signs. So if that's what happens, you're like, you know what? Our site is great. We just need a sign. As part of this, you're at the top of our list. We have signs. We'll mail it to you so that you can just put that sign up and call it good again, that it'll be back into compliance right there. If there's a bigger finding, we'll work with you through it while it is our short list of folks who we know have needs versus once we get into our broader section. So you'll be able to have that additional support throughout. So our plan and our hope for this pilot program is to start with this session to give you an overview and some information, share our thoughts. And then after this session, we'll follow up by email. We'll reach out with resources, information tools. And then we ask that folks who are participating complete their inspections, their self-inspections before September 1st. So that way in the fall, we can have a debrief meeting and then start meeting one-to-one with any communities that may have any findings. So it's really over the next few months, but whether that's next week, whether that's July, whether that is the very end of August, it is 3 months to go out there and to spend a short period of time at your site. So with that, what we've prepped as part of this is an inspection form that really helps us go down the list and check off all of those federal requirements. So these are questions that were built straight out of the federal questions, and we have 2 different versions of our inspection form. We have a digital version that, thank you, just came into you at the chat, which is an online form that is available for you. For folks that need other mechanisms to do this, we have a printable PDF that can also be downloaded. It will send out. But that printable PDF has to be scanned and sent back to us via email with all the pictures as attachments and other pieces, versus the form, you just do it online. It allows upload fields, and then you're ready to go. And we do really encourage folks to use the digital form once it comes out. It's the one way, if you prefer to type, it's the way to be able to select bubbles and type responses if it comes through. It also has some pretty cool functionality built into it that if you pick your park name, it'll tell you it's got a drop down menu and you can pick your pick your park name, pick your site name. And then it will actually tell you different things about the LWCF history at your site based on the park that you select. And then throughout the form, if there are, yes, no questions, and it will say, well, if no, then this, you will only get to see the questions that you need to answer. So if it's like, is the property being maintained? Yes. Moving along. Is it open to the public? Yes. Moving along. It becomes a really quick and easy form to do. But it is responsive. And so just to walk you through an example of what this could look like, if you pick, say, Bayside Park as one of the sites that you're going to be inspecting, it'll populate the whole list of previous LWCF grants at that site in the digital form. And then from there, by selecting any site, it will actually tell you different base information about that grant. Like, when was it funded? What was it for? Those sorts of high level details. And within our digital form, we actually have even two ways you can access that online content or that digital content. One is through any web browser, whether that be a phone, a laptop, desktop, tablet. You just need to have internet. And with that web browser version, you don't need anything special. You just click it and it fills out just like an online survey. You upload attachments. You can type throughout that function. But we also offer an app option through Survey123 is the platform. And it's a free app to download. You just need to run it on a device that needs that. And the big perk of this is if you prefer to type, you want to upload things directly, but you don't have cell phone reception at your site. If you set everything up to run on the app, you can fill out the whole form. And then as soon as you get back to cell phone or Wi-Fi reception, that's when you can submit. You don't need internet to do the inspection on site. And through the app, when you use it on your device, you can have a button where you're like, okay, it's going to ask for a picture of the LWCF sign. You can just hit the camera button and take the picture right there versus taking a picture, saving it to a computer, and uploading it to a form later. And so with that, it's going to be a very quick process. We anticipate for folks who are using the app, particularly if you have multiple sites in your community that you need to inspect overall. And the online app version also for that quickness aspect, it uses, if you allow it to know your set, your location, it'll actually pre-populate some of the fields for you. It'll help filter things down. So it says, oh, I think you're here. Is this the address? And yes, because I'm here. So there are some location options to make it even easier so that you have to answer even less questions if you use the app. So that's the form. It is a 15-question form overall. Most of the prompts are yes, no, asking about big level questions. And depending on, if yes, then explain. If no, upload a picture. So it will give you those options in the dropdown. But we know that, especially for folks who are new to the Land and Water Conservation Fund, there's a lot of additional information and support that folks probably need. So we have developed online guidance to go with it. It's a guidance document, and it has a lot of information that can help you in terms of planning, when to go out, who should do this, how should we look at things. It also explains the questions in terms of what are we looking for at each of those sites. And I'm going to go into that more in just a second, and recommendations about how to answer. And for the digital form, it does offer tips and tricks when using both the web and the app versions. So if you wanted to know things like, will it email me a copy of the form? The guidance will tell you those things. And so the one big thing that we want to pull together that is something that not any other state that we've seen has put in as part of their guidance is really some strong recommendations and pictures to help you understand what the questions are. Because even for our team, as we were digging into these federal requirements, we're like, well, what is when you have to ask, is the site being maintained? Our question is like, well, what does maintenance look like? And it's a really important and distinguishing factor for this particular inspection is that for us, maintenance means like it can be used by the public for the resource it was intended, and it's not a safety hazard. Like that is the level of maintenance that we're looking for. And so we have pulled together pictures throughout this guidance when you're like, well, what does vandalism look like? And how should we think about that? So there are references there. So like that basketball goal that is missing the rim and the net, right? Like you can't actually play basketball on a basketball hoop that is missing the hoop part. That tennis court that is overgrown with grass throughout is not actually fit for playing tennis. The swing that is broken is unusable. So we've provided information throughout that to have clarity on those pieces. And I think this piece is something I really want folks to sort of sit with, is that these really are big picture things that we're looking for. Throughout this whole piece, there might be notes of like, well, because personally I used to, back in the day, manage nature play areas. And so I might look at things and be like, the wooden blocks there all over the ground. This is not, the appearance is not right. It is not inviting. This is not the wooden blocks are on the ground level of pieces. Like this is not that level of question. This is it dangerous? Is it inaccessible because of that? Those pieces. So the guidance will help you unpack all of those questions of like, what is it there? So we strongly encourage you to look at that. I saw a question come in of, is this the right app? And I know that Joe and Marlena are on it based on that. So thank you for asking that question in the chat. Is this the app? We will get it for you here soon. But know that when we send the survey out, actually like through the link, this picture here, open in browser or open in the field app, is actually the first page that you will get each time that you open the survey. And so it will take you exactly to the app that you need directly through that link when we send it out. All right. Well, sort of the last chunk that we wanted to dig into together on this session was the question that folks are probably having of like, well, what happens after the inspection? We're going to be doing these inspections. What happens next? And for us, when we think about the inspections, like what could the results of this be? For many sites, what we'll expect is that you will be all clear, that your site is going to be set for the next 5 years, and that FPR will reach out within 5 years and remind folks when the next inspection is due in the next round. For other sites, there may be findings, and it's actually written into the federal requirements that it's ultimately the site manager's responsibility to address any findings. And for FPR, this is actually going to be important to maintain eligibility to apply for any of our future outdoor recreation grants. Is that if there is a known finding, there has to be a plan in place to address this. And some of the findings really could be small and minor. There might be things that, as folks go out to do inspections, that you just need to fix. As I mentioned before, those LWCF signs, we know that there are communities that need those signs. That's why we have a set of them pre-printed. So we have both sticker and acrylic sign versions of them to help you out with that. And so if it's something small like that, it just needs to be fixed, and then you report it and you're all clear again. There might be something that's more of a moderate consideration that you'll work with our team on how to address that. So this could be something like obsolescence, which is the term that the National Park Service uses when you have a resource that is really so old that it can't be maintained anymore, that it can't be kept safe, and it needs to be retired and in some cases demolished. And really that is paperwork to go through that process. If you had a pool that was built in the 1960s that is no longer functional to maintain, we just have to document that piece. So it could be something like that, where it's us just working to update the records. It could be things like a maintenance plan, a staffing plan. What is that going to be? And so if there's a more moderate finding, FPR will work with you on how to resolve that, develop a strategy so that you can get back into that good eligibility and good standing for future grant money. And then there is a chance for some sites across the state is that it could be a more major finding, which triggers a process that the National Park Service known as a conversion. And we're trying not to do self-inspections for any sites that we suspect require conversions. That's actually a whole other suite of ones. We'll have staff going out to them individually, be like, we think there's a problem here. We want to confirm whether or not that's going to be happening. So if there is a major finding that might trigger something called a conversion, that really becomes a big process, because what that could be is something like, if the LWCF funding was used to build a resource, buy land, and then the town sells that land. That's going to be a piece that would be a pretty significant finding. Or if that area is no longer used for outdoor public recreation. If there are non-recreation, even no matter what it is, non-recreation uses happen within there. One of the pieces that we see is over time that was where the library got built, is inside the park boundary, or the fire department, or a school wing expansion is now in that space. Really what a conversion is basically a swap, is the function of that. And so that it's based on land value, that if there's a part that is no longer working for that, we just got to find a replacement for that. Unallowable indoor facilities would be another thing that triggers it, or the public is no longer allowed to access the site. So those are all pretty major things, which is why they would trigger that conversion. And even if that happens, FPR will still work with folks to help them resolve this, because we have a plan in place of how this works. But going through this, knowing that we have 838 sites that are going to be inspected, right now our conversion list is very short. And so with our team that we have here, we're happy to answer questions, provide support. As that list grows, our time's going to just be spread a little bit farther out. But so even if there is a major finding, like, we're going to be here to help you through this process of figuring it out. And so with that, we expect most of the inspections to come back just fine, to be able to get that all clear notice and have you set for the next 5 years and eligible for future funding. And so with that, I will pause now and open it up for questions that folks have, whether it's about the program, about inspection requirements, federal requirements, state plans, anything.